Truce of Hudaibiyah. The prophet had a vision that he entered Mecca and circumambulated the sacred house of God. It was a true dream from God, as it would later come true, although the period, month or year of the pilgrimage had not been indicated in the vision. The companions of the prophet were overjoyed when the prophet told them about it. Everybody esteemed and revered Mecca and the holy sanctuary there. The opportunity of paying a visit to it had been denied to them for a very long time, but nobody ever ceased to think of the holy city. They had been longing to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca all those years and were looking forward to the day when their heart's desire would be fulfilled. The Muhajirin were especially consumed with such desire since Mecca had been their birthplace and they had lived and grown up there, but they were forced to abandon it. As soon as the prophet informed the companions of the vision, all of them started making preparations for the journey, while their overenthusiasm at the prospect of realizing the ambition of their life convinced them that they were going to call upon the house of God that very year. Almost all of them promptly agreed to accompany the prophet, with hardly anyone opting to be left behind. Trip to Mecca. It was the month of Dhul Qa'dah, in the 6th year of Hijrah, when the prophet traveled to Mecca with the intention of performing Umrah, the lesser pilgrimage. The prophet had no intention of performing the Hajj, however. He had with him 1,400 companions as pilgrims, along with the sacrificial animals, so that everybody would know that he was going not for war but for paying homage to the Kaaba. When he neared Mecca, the prophet sent ahead a man from Quzayh to find out the reaction of the Quraysh. When the prophet reached Usfan, a village between Mecca and Medina, the informer came back to tell him that the tribesmen of Ka'b bin Lu'ay had assembled a strong force of nomad warriors to check his advance to Mecca. The prophet continued to drive ahead. Upon reaching a depression in the valley of Mecca, his dromedary called Kaswa knelt down and would not get up. The men around the prophet started exclaiming, "Kaswa won't get up, Kaswa won't get up." But the prophet said, "Kaswa has not refused, for such is not her nature. The one who restrained the elephants is keeping her back." He was referring to how Allah withheld the Ethiopian army from entering Mecca many years before. The prophet continued, "I swear by him who holds my life that if they propose anything to me pertinent with the regard due to Allah and ask me to show kindness, I will certainly accede to their request." The prophet then spurred the camel to move. The camel immediately sprang up on her legs, but changed her direction and started off towards Hudaibiyah. She came to a halt in a place at which end there was a ditch that had but little water. Certain persons complained to the prophet that they were thirsty. He took out an arrow from his sheath and asked them to throw it in the ditch. Thereupon, water started gushing out, quenching everyone's thirst. Irritation of the Quraysh. The Quraysh were in a dither when they learned that the prophet had pitched his camp so near to Mecca. But as the prophet had no intention of fighting the Qurayshites, he thought it fit to send one of his companions to remove their apprehensions. He sent for Umar to depute him to Mecca, but Umar said, "O Messenger of Allah, there is none of Bani Adi bin Ka'b in Mecca who may protect me in case the Quraysh decided to lay hands on me." Umar also suggested that Uthman might be sent, as his entire clan was there and he could very well deliver the message. Uthman was then summoned by the prophet, and sent to the Quraysh to tell them that he had not come for war but merely for performing the Umrah. The prophet also asked Uthman to invite the Quraysh to Islam and to cheer the believing men and women still in Mecca with the glad tidings that God was about to make their religion victorious when they would not be required to conceal their faith. Love put to trial. Uthman went to Mecca and delivered the message of the prophet to Abu Sufyan and other leaders of the Quraysh. After the Meccans had heard the message brought by Uthman, they said, "If you want to go round the holy sanctuary, you may do so." Uthman, however, replied, "I won't do so until the prophet has gone round the Kaaba." Later, after his return from Mecca, certain Muslims said to him, "Abu Abdullah, you have been fortunate enough to fulfill your heart's desire by going round the Kaaba." "Don't be unfair to me," replied Uthman. "I declare by him who holds my life that if I were detained there for a whole year and the prophet were to remain in Hudaibiyah, I would not have gone round the Kaaba until the prophet had done so. Frankly speaking, the Quraysh did invite me to circumambulate the house of God, but I declined." The Pledge of Ridwan. In the meantime, the prophet was informed that Uthman had been killed. He summoned the people to vow in avenging Uthman's death. Everybody gathered round the prophet, impatiently. Standing under the shade of a tree, the prophet took one person at a time from the 1400 standing around him to get their assurance. And after everyone had obliged to the oath, he struck one of his hands on the other, saying, "This is the pledge on behalf of Uthman." Thus was the pledge of Ridwan, the pledge that earned God's pleasure, taken under an acacia tree. It is mentioned in the Quran. Allah was well pleased with believers when they swore allegiance unto thee beneath the tree, and he knew what was in their hearts, and he sent down peace of reassurance on them, and hath rewarded them with a near victory. Quran 48:18. Parleys, conciliation and accord. The deadlock still lingered on when Budayh bin Warqa, of the tribe of Khuzai, suddenly appeared with a few of his clansmen to resolve the impasse. He asked the Prophet, "What have you come for?" "We have come to perform the Umrah," replied the Prophet. "The Quraysh are already wrecked by war. If they agree, I will make peace with them for a specified period, and they should give way to my companions and me. If they want, they may merge with the group that others have joined, and this would give them a respite. But if nothing is acceptable to them except war, then by him who holds my life, I would fight them until I lose my head or Allah makes his religion victorious." Budayh bin Warqa conveyed to the Quraysh what he had heard from the Messenger of God. Urwa bin Masud al-Thaqafi, who happened to be present on the occasion, advised the Quraysh that they ought to accept the terms proposed by the Prophet, for they were absolutely reasonable. He also suggested that he might personally see the Prophet, to which the Quraysh agreed. And so, Urwa went to the Prophet, to discuss the matter with him, but he also kept his eyes open to closely monitor the Muslims' treatment of the Prophet. He saw that if he asked for anything, they vied for complying with his order, and if he spoke, everybody listened with full attention. Nobody even dared to look straight into his eyes. When Urwa went back to the Quraysh, he said, "I have been to the courts of the kings and have seen the splendor of the Caesar, the Khosrows, and the Negus. But never have I seen any king as revered as Muhammad was by his companions." He gave the details of his assessment of the Prophet, and again advised the Quraysh to accept the terms offered to them. The Treaty of Peace. In the meantime, another man of Bani Kinana, Mikraz b. Hafs, arrived in Makkah. He agreed with what the earlier emissaries had advised the Quraysh, and so they decided to send Suhail b. Amr to negotiate the terms of the treaty. As soon as the Prophet saw him coming, he murmured, "That they have sent this man, it seems that they want peace." The Prophet also asked to prepare the agreement.